You see them on almost every city skyline, right? These massive cranes, lifting tons of steel and glass like it's nothing. But have you ever stopped to wonder what keeps these giants from, well, falling? It's not just the operator's skill. There's a whole hidden network of safety systems, a last line of defense. And we're going to dive into what they are. This quote, man, it just gets right to the heart of it. It's basically saying a catastrophe doesn't just happen out of the blue, it's the final, tragic step in a chain of smaller failures that almost always starts with the safety controls. And here they are. This infographic lays out 16 critical devices. Now, don't get overwhelmed by this list. You don't need to memorize it. The real key here is to understand how they all work together as a system. So we're going to break down the most important ones to show you how they prevent disaster. Let's be real. Operating a crane is one of the highest risk jobs on any construction site. You're dealing with immense weights, dizzying heights, and you're working right next to people and the public. When something goes wrong, the consequences are immediate and absolutely devastating. So the most important thing to get is that these aren't just a bunch of separate gadgets. You have to see them as a system of redundant protections. Think of them as layers of defense, with one backing up the other. And this safety net idea, it's the perfect way to think about it. For a true catastrophe to happen, it's rarely just one thing that fails. It almost always means that multiple layers of this safety net have been compromised, ignored, or even worse, intentionally bypassed. Okay, so to get our heads around all these devices, let's break them down into 3 simple categories. We've got the crane's brain, which does all the critical thinking. We've got its senses, which give it awareness. And we've got its reflexes, which are the physical, automatic stops. First up, the crane's brain. This is the big one. This system is all about handling the single most dangerous aspect of any lift, calculating the load and preventing an overload, which is the #1 cause of cranes tipping over or collapsing. It's called the load moment indicator, or LMI for short. It's constantly crunching the numbers. Is this load, at this angle, at this distance, safe? If the answer starts to lean towards no, it starts screaming at you with alarms and flashing lights. And if those warnings are ignored, it can literally lock out the crane's functions to stop a disaster from happening. So what happens when it's ignored? Well, in 2008, a crane collapsed in New York City, killing 7 people. The investigation pointed directly to an overloaded crane where the LMI system was either broken or had been bypassed. That number, it's just a tragic, sobering reminder of what this one device prevents day in and day out.
All right, so let's move on to the next layer. You know, a brain is only as good as the information it gets, and that's where the crane's senses come in. These are the devices that give the operator crucial awareness of the constantly changing world around them.
What's really cool here is how these devices cover all the bases. You've got the wind speed indicator for invisible dangers. A sudden gust of wind can turn a totally safe load into a nightmare. You have camera systems to wipe out blind spots, giving the operator eyes exactly where they need them. And then you've got proximity sensors, which act like a digital shield, warning of collisions. They are literally the eyes and ears of the operation. Okay, last group, the reflexes. Think of these as the absolute last resort, the physical fail-safes. If the brain and the senses somehow miss a problem that's developing, these devices are designed to physically stop the crane from destroying itself. The anti-2 block, or A2B, is a perfect example. It stops the hook block from getting pulled all the way up into the tip of the boom. That event, it's called 2 blocking, and it can snap the hoist line, dropping the load. And right there to back it up, you've got the hoist limit switch, another layer of protection to stop that from happening. See? Redundancy. That's the name of the game. So let's recap. We've established that a modern crane is this incredible machine, an engineering marvel just packed with sophisticated, redundant safety systems designed not to fail. Which brings us to the most important and, let's be honest, often the weakest link in the whole chain, the human element. This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If the machine is this smart, why do we still see those horrible headlines about collapses? Well, the answer, unfortunately, isn't found in any engineering diagram. The answer, it's spelled out right here, in big, bold, red letters. Bypassing a safety device is a serious violation. The technology is sound. The weak point happens when a person decides they know better than the machine, or they're pressured into thinking they do. And look, these aren't just hypotheticals. These are real, common, and incredibly dangerous things that happen on job sites. But why? Why would anyone do this? It's hardly ever out of malice. It's usually intense pressure to meet a schedule, a feeling that the alarms are just annoying or overly cautious, or maybe a workplace where these kinds of shortcuts have just become normal. Each one of these actions is like taking a pair of scissors and deliberately cutting a hole in that safety net. So if the tech by itself isn't the whole answer, what is? Well, it all comes down to building a culture of safety. It's about a collective commitment to process, to diligence, and to accountability that makes sure the technology is actually respected and allowed to do its job.
And where does that start? It starts right here with this single most important human action of the day, the pre-start inspection. Every single one of these devices must be checked. If one is faulty, the crane does not work. Period. No exceptions. This is the first and most powerful line of human defense.
These 5 steps, this is basically the playbook. Inspect every single day. Treat an alarm like the critical warning it is, not a nuisance. Have the courage to stop the job if something isn't right. Have the integrity to report it when you see someone doing something unsafe. And never, ever stop learning. This is how you protect the system. So let's bring it all home. Back to that core idea we started with. These modern cranes are engineered with layer after layer of protection. When a disaster happens, it's almost never the crane that failed first. The investigation will almost always lead back to the controls, that last line of defense, and show that they were compromised long before the fall. And that really leaves us with this final, powerful thought. See, priorities can change, right? They shift depending on schedules or budgets, but a value is constant. It's part of who you are and how you work. For all these systems we've just talked about to actually work, safety can't just be a priority. It has to be a core value.